Revitalize. The word means to imbue with new life and vitality. Is there any more important area to emphasize than that right now? But how do we tap into it? How do we help others in this area? What are the practical steps involved in making it a reality? Welcome to the latest episode of the Catalyst Health, Wellness, and Performance Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Cooper of the Catalyst Coaching Institute, and today's guest is Dr. Raquel Garzon. She's the president and founder of the Revitalize Project. As a speaker, she has presented to thousands of high performers in the areas of health, business, and sports in over 25 countries. She holds a Doctorate of Health Science, Nova Southeastern University, both a Bachelor's and Master of Science degrees, and is a registered dietitian and personal trainer. So basically, she just sits around a lot and doesn't do much. By the way, our 2021 trainings have wrapped up, but if you are looking to pursue a career as a health and wellness coach, this is a great time to start planning ahead. Let's talk about it if you'd like. Reach out to us anytime. We can set up a call. The email is results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com, or you can take a look at the website, catalystcoachinginstitute.com. And by the way, I just want to give an extra thank you to all of you who have been sharing this podcast with friends, with peers, with others that you're around. We don't do any advertising. So when we hear from new listeners, I know it's got to be coming from you. Every single episode takes somewhere around 7 hours to produce, and sometimes, frankly, I don't know. I just question whether the time is worth it. But when we hear from new listeners, yeah, I just really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Now, let's get revitalized with Dr. Raquel Garzon on the latest episode of the Catalyst Health, Wellness, and Performance Coaching Podcast. All right. Well, Dr. Garzon, it's so good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Cooper. We're being formal.
Yeah, exactly. Let's be super official here. Let's get out of the way. Revitalize. That's the word. That's your word. That's where you're going with this thing. What does it mean to you? Everyone's heard that word. Everybody has something in their head. What does it mean to you? And why is it so core to your mission?
Well, thank you for asking me that. Nobody ever asks me that. Well, revitalize means to bring something to life, or give it more life. And so a lot of what I do is I help people and organizations or even communities figure out what they need to do to thrive. And so it might be a certain aspect that needs to be revitalized. It might be your emotions, your connection to yourself. It could be something more well-being, wellness, physical, something along those lines. But, all of us, I think, as we go through our lives, no matter who we are or where we are, there's some aspect of our lives that we want to bring more passion to or bring to life in ways that maybe we haven't before. And so I like to think of myself as a conduit, as an organization that can help people navigate those things. So I don't do it for them, but maybe, we can provide some tools and strategies for discovery, reflection, to bring that upon themselves. It's the empowerment.
I love that. And I love your energy behind it. It's kind of funny. Sometimes people have this mission and you hear them talk about it and you're like, really? Like, it doesn't even sound like you care about it, but you got that energy, you got that excitement. So that makes it fun. Where did this come from? What caused this to be such an important part of your life? Was there some aspect where you went through a tough struggle or whatever in your life and you just realized, I've got to do this myself, and then you found ways to help others do the same? Or was there something else that brought this about?
Brad, we don't have enough time for that on the show.
A little counseling session right here.
It's just, that could be a whole book. But I think there have just been, small things that have happened to me in my life. There have been big things that have happened. I think we're all like that. I don't think it was any one thing. I think it was a myriad of different things coming together in my life. I started my career as a dietitian, working in the clinical world, as most dietitians do right out of school, or at least they did back then when I graduated from school in the 90s. But I think it was partly encountering some frustration with taking all of these great things I had learned in school and figuring out that talking about those things or doing the things that I was taught in school didn't actually really help people that much. And I think it was like a sobering moment of like, oh my gosh, I just gave this person all of this great nutrition information that's going to help them and give them what they need. And it was like, why aren't they doing it? And so I think it was just this, I went into this career feeling like I was going to save all of these people. And sure, you have those patience or those moments, but I think it was this big realization of that's just not enough. I really want to understand how people think and how they work. And then just in my own life, like I wasn't perfect. I was in therapy and having these struggles. I'm sure the therapist was looking at me saying, I went to school all these years. What's wrong with her? And so this got me on this journey of, what is it that makes people tick? I did my master's in nutrition as well, still felt like, it's just not enough. And then I started working in the area of just performance and helping high performers to figure out themselves physically, emotionally, mentally, what's their purpose in life. And that opened my eyes to just a new way of doing things. So when I went back to school to do my doctorate, I was super focused. I was already in my 40s. It was like my midlife crisis. And so at that point, I knew what I wanted to understand. And that was, how do I help people understand themselves? What motivates them? What derails them? Why do we sometimes engage in self-destructive behaviors? There's a reason for it. There's something wrong with you, right? There's a reason for it. And then to unlock sort of the neuroscience behind it. How do you help people to make change, sustainable change in a way that honors them, respects them, doesn't discount anything that's gone in their lives? Because I think that everything happens to inform us or to protect us or to help us to survive. And we have to acknowledge that. So here I am after all of that. See, I told you that was like a snippet.
Well, I'm waiting for the book to come out. If it makes you feel any better, you went back in your 40s. I went back for my PhD at 50. So
oh my gosh.
Maybe my that midlife is a little longer period. Who knows? All right. So one of your central topics is the idea of feeling stuck. I want to spend some time on this. That's probably a big issue for a lot of people that are listening to us in whatever area. And you mentioned several of them. Are there a few keys you can share that would help listeners who are saying, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm stuck, either personally or professionally, to move beyond that or at least start that process?
Yeah, I think that there's a reason we get stuck. I mean, being stuck, although it frustrates us or it makes us feel like, there's something wrong with us, it exists for a reason. I mean, there is some comfort in doing the same thing or being in the same place. You know it and it's familiar to you. And anything outside of that, even if it's positive, is scary because, you think that if you make a change, all of these great things could happen. But deep down, you think, what if they don't happen? And if I don't even try or I don't leave this place, then there's nothing to be ashamed about, or there's nothing to, kind of say like, I tried it and I failed. Sometimes not trying feels a little bit more comfortable. So first, I just like to establish that we all get stuck and we're like almost programmed to be stuck to some degree. It's a self-protective mechanism.
Yeah.
And I think that, you have to, first of all, just don't shame yourself about it. Don't beat yourself up. What's wrong with you? Why can't you mobilize? Why can't you change? Because that's just not helping the situation. I think when you just say like, I understand why I'm stuck. I understand that this is part of the process. It just takes some of that pressure off of you to then explore, why is it that I want to move out of this space? What I see the benefit. If you don't acknowledge the benefits, you're just sort of, deceiving yourself. But then if you can acknowledge what are the costs, right? If I stay here, so there's opportunity costs, right? Like what might I never find out? There could just be costs to yourself, right? Being there. But if you can explore those costs, then it gives you a reason to push past that fear and take the first step. And what I tell people is just take that first step. Like, don't imagine like, what it's going to be like, and 1,000 steps from now and 10,000 steps from now, because that's super overwhelming. You just say, let me take that first step. And maybe that first step isn't as scary as you thought it was going to be, which then allows you to take the next step. So whatever it is, relationships, something with yourself, in your health, always there's benefits of being stuck, costs, but there is a way out, and it is a journey. So you can't just do that overnight. And if
I'm almost picturing the piece of paper where you put the pluses and the minuses, your costs and your benefits, et cetera, et cetera.
You're an engineer. You could do it that way.
Exactly. So if I do that and then I look at it and I think, yikes, I think the cost is too much. Do you reevaluate, or kind of walk us through that? Maybe you talk about we're almost programmed to do this, and I love that. That makes a lot of sense, and it helps put a lot of things in perspective with this. But when I do that, then I think, oh my gosh, that's bigger than I realized because I lay that out. Would you suggest people stay with it? Maybe look for a few more benefits, maybe truly analyze the actual cost versus perceived cost. Any thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, I think that you don't have to rush through the process, right? So if you're stuck, like, what's the rush, right? So I look at it as sometimes when you start to acknowledge the benefits, the benefits are that this is self-protective. I'm not having to take risks. I don't have to look bad. Maybe stepping outside of that stuck zone forces you to confront things from your past that you haven't wanted to confront. So take your time and really just peel back the layers. Journaling is a great thing to do, or if you have someone that you can talk through it with, I think that's also really helpful. But, I think that some people feel like I'm supposed to get out of here, right? I'm stuck. But maybe it's this perception of being stuck because of pressures that other people are putting on you. It could be that your family has expectations of what you should be doing and where you should be in your life. You should be married by now. And it's like, when you're not married, it's when are you getting married? Right. When you get married, it's when are you having a kid? When you have one kid, it's when are you having two? And it's never enough for other people. And I think part of that is because they don't want to look at their own lives and realize that maybe something in their life isn't enough. Yeah, so they have to go pick on other people's lives. This is why we have trolling on social media. And so I think that it's true. It's true. So I think you have to just step back and say, what do I want? And maybe you're not really stuck. Maybe you're exactly where you need to be at that point in your life. And you're allowing other people to make you feel stuck. Now, if you truly do feel stuck and you feel like you want to move out of that place, you're going to have to acknowledge what keeps you there. There's always stuff that keeps you there. And at some point, that stuff might just be things that are occurring in your present moment. But a lot of times it's tied to things in the past. It's never without, like these strings attached to something from the past. And so take your time, one of those things might be really, really big, and it exists for a reason. And we go through things and we have to take our time going through that, right? Because it becomes embedded within our DNA almost.
Oh, yeah.
How we operate.
Yeah.
And I think it's, again, not rushing through. I want to prove, like people want to prove something to the world and to others by making these drastic changes and this makeover, like we're obsessed with makeovers, like HGTV makeovers, weight loss makeovers, doesn't matter. We want makeovers, right? And it can be exciting, but it's not real from the perspective that that's not how usually things happen. You move into a house, you have this vision of making all of these changes, and 20 years later, you're like, I haven't even gotten to a third of those, and so let's be for real, like we think that that's how life should be, and society sort of keeps fueling that, but that's not how life is. Life occurs in these small moments, and in each moment, you can decide to have a new or different thought, or you can decide to take a feeling that you're having and respond to it differently. You can decide that you're going to choose this instead of this. And that's how actual change happens. It's just these small moments that we miss because we're so busy worrying about the future or lamenting the past. We miss out on these small moments that we can prove to ourselves that change is possible and that we don't have to stay somewhere we don't want to be.
Did you know that Suzanne and I are in the process of moving? Is that why you use the house example?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, you kind of hit home there a little bit. That was slightly painful, but hopefully she won't hear this. That's okay. No, that's okay.
Instant makeover.
That's right. So I love what you said about proving to yourself. That gets so far out of perspective. We're so constantly, I do this all the time. I'm going to prove nobody cares. Like no one cares. And we forget that. I tell people, I enjoy endurance sports, and I always tell athletes, I finally realized no one cares where I finish except the guy behind me and the guy in front of me. That's about it. My friends love me the same. My family loves me the same. They're interested. It's a conversation piece, but frankly, they don't care. And so why am I putting so much pressure on myself? Because they don't care. So gravity is a super strong, and you didn't use that phrase, but you basically said it. We're trying to fight gravity. That's that unstuck piece. We're sitting on the couch. We're happy there. It's just not worth getting up. Any tips for that first? You said look at the first step versus the 1,000th step or the 10,000th step. Any tips for just getting that first movement? Pick your arm up or whatever. And we're not talking about the couch here, but just in general, any tips to get that first little oomph going when, doggone it, I'm feeling pretty good here.
Well, I mean, if you're feeling pretty good there, maybe there's no reason to change.
Okay,
right? So
good.
You do have to find some kind of a friction or conflict, between what you're doing and what you really either want out of life or who you feel like you truly are, right? So it's not who other people want you to be.
Yes.
But when you recognize that there is a better version of yourself somewhere in there, and you recognize that that's just someone that you want to bring out, and again, it's not an instant makeover. Here's who I was today.
Mm-hmm.
Ta-da. Who I am tomorrow. But we're constantly turning over cells in our body. So as you turn over cells, you want to think about, instead of the same cell maybe showing up in the same form, it's taken on a little change, right? And so I think it's really, there's just so many avenues. I think some people are motivated by the positive, that purpose, that who I truly feel I am, right? And that inspires them enough to say, you know what, I want to live this person. I want to bring this person to life, cell by cell, moment by moment, right? Other people are just naturally more motivated by the fear of the negative.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that's just, science shows that. Some people are more motivated by positive, others by this fear, like they want to avoid something bad from happening. So that's another thing is, if I stay like this, if I continue doing what I've been doing, where is this taking me? What does that look like in my life? And if you can kind of see how it's evolving and you see that it's something negative, you see that it's something that you just don't want in your life, that can sometimes be motivating to say, you know what, I'm going to do something about it. Now, action is like, you can either just say, I'm going to take whatever I think that first step might be. Sometimes it's just about breaking. It's not even about doing something that new. It's about thinking about not doing the old. Okay. And so it's like, if your routine, like sometimes I'll ask someone like, walk me through your day, like just your morning routine, I'm trying to get to where does this behavior, maybe this action that's not really serving you, it's not functional to what you want. Where does it start? It doesn't start in the action. It starts somewhere else, right? Does it start with the action before that or the action before that? Does it start with a thought? Does it start with an emotion somewhere? And if I can get a picture of what someone's routine is, I might just give them a suggestion for doing one thing differently. And that one thing that they do differently or think differently or feel differently totally leads them on a different path. If you turn yourself 1 degree in a different direction, and you keep walking, you're going to end up in a totally different place than you previously would have. Yeah. So sometimes it's just making that 1 degree shift in some type of a repetitive kind of domino effect, if that makes sense. So,
it makes perfect sense. I think that cumulative effect or that compounding interest, they talk about compounding interest, the eighth wonder of the world. It's perfect. 1%, but over 1,000 miles puts you over there.
It's a totally different place, right? Yeah. So I don't feel like I have one answer. I feel like what I help people do is explore for themselves. Like, you know yourself better than me. Right. Like I was just talking to someone yesterday and they know I'm a dietitian. And I was like, listen, I have a bachelor's and master's. I have calculations and equations. I can give you all of those things. But honestly, at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to know better what to eat, how much, based on how you feel and if you listen to your body. Like I can give you all of those things as a starting point, and there are additional tools, right? But you're still going to know more than me, right? Because you're living the experience. And so it's that same notion as I try to help people explore these things so that they say, you know what, I'm a person, when I made a change before in my past, it was because of this. Like I seem to be more motivated by those positive things that I can work towards. I seem to be more motivated when I'm really scared about something happening. you can start to know yourself. So why try to emulate what someone else did for change if that's not how you think and that's not how you operate? You have to find yourself. And once you do that, you can change anything. And that it's like a superpower. So yeah,
I love that. And the health and wellness coaches that are already have been through, training and then working in that role are loving what you're saying, because they're like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm doing with my clients. So you talk about work-life integration, and I love that you didn't call it work-life balance. I'm so sick of that phrase. But tell us what you mean by that, and maybe a few key steps for somebody that says, oh, mine work-life is not integrated at all.
Yeah. So I hate the word balance probably just as much as you do, just because it implies like a balance. Right. When you see it implies like this 50-50, right? And that's just not a reality, right? That's just not how our lives work. Even I own my own business, right? You do the same thing. Like I work way more hours maybe than I do some other things, sure. But I don't see that as a burden. I don't see it as a problem. And the reason is that I try to leverage each for each, right? So like all of these areas of my life, it's not like work and then there's life. Work is part of life and life is part of work. And so that's how I look at it. The way that you want to integrate it is a way that it's functional for you, in a way that you feel like you are having an impact in all of the areas of your life, including work that matter to you, that you feel like you feel fulfilled in some way, right? And you don't have to be an owner, and you don't have to be a CEO, and you can do this in any role that you have. And I think about this, my first job was at Chick-fil-A.
Nice.
And yeah, my son wants to know I don't still work there. So cool.
I bet he does.
I was freshman or sophomore in high school. I think it was a freshman, and it's not a glamorous job by all means when you first start, right? You're doing all of these things, but I felt fulfilled doing it because I felt like I did what I was supposed to do there, and I had an impact, and I enjoyed the work that I was doing. And I've tried to carry that throughout my life. And the moment I feel like, hey, I can't do that, I think that, that this is not the right place for me, right? And it doesn't matter what it looks like to other people on the outside. I've been shunned and scolded for leaving perfectly good jobs or, those sorts of things, because I believe in this. I believe that I should be having experiences at work that make me feel like I'm providing value in some way, shape, or form, right? So serving food to hungry people is providing value, right? You're having an impact. That could be a meal that's really important to that person. Maybe that's the only meal they eat a day. Maybe that's their comfort food for when they're, after therapy. Sure. I remember after therapy sessions, I would always get French fries. And that was an important piece of my recovery in therapy is French fries. You just don't know what meaning food has for people. And if you can think about it in that way, it just takes on a different meaning. So I feel like if you can look at work as a way of providing value, having an impact, and you learn lessons at work that apply to life that make you a better parent or that make you better at managing relationships or collaboration or managing conflict or thinking strategically, which you need to manage a household or kids or, so many, or a new house or whatever that might be. I mean, you are developing skills that can be applied in your life and vice versa. The experiences that you have in your life create value for you as an employee doing anything that you're doing, because there are life lessons that apply to work from a collaboration, conflict, negotiation, all of these sorts of things. It doesn't matter if you're an individual contributor with maybe very little decision-making power in an organization, or you have all the power, which nobody does anyway. Even me, I feel like I own my own company. I don't always have power, right?
Totally.
And so I think that when you can see your life this way, I think that it doesn't have to be a competition. You can look at it as, what can I get out of my work right now and what I'm doing? What can I learn that will make me a better person? What can I do in my life right now as a parent? And organizations need to think about this, because they also need to see that life that takes place outside of the computer, emails, meetings, and other things that are going on is a valuable experience that they are not paying for from employees.
Yeah.
There are employees that have experiences in life and have gone through things that make them more valuable to an organization, and they did not pay them for those hours that they were having those experiences, that suffering, all of those sorts of things. So I think it's really unfair when an organization says, I pay you for blah, and then you go off and no, that is not how it works. You are lucky that I have been through so much crap in my life. You know what? Because if not, I wouldn't be able to handle the dysfunctional environment that's going on here. It's true. It's true. And so I think all of us need to see it as a big earth. I don't know how you want to look at it, but it all connects together. And so when you start to see your life this way, then it just makes it so much more fulfilling, so much less stressful. You don't feel like you're letting someone down here or letting someone down here, because even when I was working a lot of hours and traveling away from my kids, I could see that the experiences that I was having in that work that I was doing was going to make me a better parent. And so anyway, that's my whole shtick with that.
Well, it really bums me out that you don't have more passion about this topic.
Like I told you, we need an 8-hour program to really get into all of this.
Oh, I love it. All right. Finances, obviously a big deal for almost all of us. I don't think Jeff Bezos and Warren Buffett listen to this podcast, so we'll just let them off the hook. You're not claiming to be a financial planner, so we'll make that clear up front. But what are some steps we can take with our finances on a practical level that might make a difference?
Well, I think a lot of what we've already kind of talked about. I mean, a lot of us are chasing financial goals maybe, or money because we feel this pressure from society to achieve, right? There's this pressure to achieve. And, you know, it's like you talked about, like, no one cares where I finish. No one cares, you know, what I'm doing. And to some degree that's true, but that's not the impression that society or an organization gives. You know, they use money as a kind of a carrot, right? So we do it with kids from a very young age. Well, if you don't go to school and study hard, you're not going to be able to get a good job and make enough money. So I just don't know if that's the right approach, right? I mean, we need money. I'm not thinking like, we live on clouds and rainbows and unicorns here, but it's a very dangerous way to set up this concept of finances, right? So first of all, we need to get centered on, you know, how much we really need to get our, you know, basic needs met, right? Which we know from the research studies, I don't know, it varies between, like, you know, from a happiness perspective, right? 50,000, 60,000, 70,000. Once you go beyond that, there's not an increase in happiness, right? And so you need to get centered on what you want out of life. What do you like project? For me, one of the things that I was really a discovery tool, I guess I'll call it, was going to an estate sale. And here's why. So estate sales a lot of times are done when people die, right? And the family doesn't want to have to go through all of their stuff, and they just hire a company to sell everything, like their cars, like everything, like even like half-used shampoo bottles are for sale. Okay, so you're walking through this person's home where they lived for who knows how long. And it just feels so strange. I was so sad going through this person's home thinking, gosh, this object, like, who knows, like, what this object meant to them and where they got it. And, you know, all of these things, but people are just pawing these things and asking for discounts, right? And it's just this notion of you die, and then all of this stuff, people are just pawing through it at the end going, oh my gosh, this person had really bad taste, and who wears this stuff, or whatever might be going on, and disregarding anything that like meant anything to you. I went through like an estate sale completely traumatized. And I was like, oh my God, like, what am I ever going to say about my crap this one day when I'm dead, right? And so there was a little bit of a shift there where it was like, those things are not as important, right? What's more important is how you live while you're here. Yes, we all enjoy the things that we enjoy, but you know, it's not those things that really create happiness and meaning and fulfillment. And we know that because we know people that have all the money in the world. They don't need to work. They can spend on anything they want, and they're miserable people. And I go to low resource communities all the time, and I see people with virtually nothing. And they can be happy, they're generous, they're kind. There's things about them that sometimes I feel like I wish I had more of that. And they're living on dirt floors with no electricity and running water. And I'm wishing to have some of what they have. And I think that's where we need to center ourselves. And then from there, you sort of just build, I think chasing money is a problem. I think that what you want to do in life is chase your dreams, chase your passions, feel fulfilled, provide value. And if you can make money in doing that, that's great. And I think that that's a better way to take that approach. When you say, I'm going to become a X because it makes this,
right.
I think that's a problem. And it's part of what leads to corruption. It's part of what leads to people wheeling and dealing and doing things that are ethically, questionable, sure. Right? Or doing things that are illegal, and it doesn't feel like that to them in that moment. It feels like they're doing what they need to do, right? Like this whole, I'm going to pay you off to get my kids into college. Well, why would we do that? Oh, I'm so sorry that I did that. Now I see that it's wrong. But in the moment that we're doing that, we feel like I'm doing what I need to for my kids to have a chance because they have to go to a good school. If not, they don't get a good job. If not, they don't make money, or they don't appeal to the people that are going to marry them that have money, or whatever it might be, right?
Right.
And that's what our world becomes. And then it just becomes a world full of greed and kind of pushing people aside. And you see it within organizations, even to get pay increases based on a scoring system. If there's a bell curve scoring system and you know that to get a higher raise, you have to score higher and someone else needs to take the fall for that, you see people turning on each other and the workplace becomes less humane. So it's follow your passions, live below your means, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. Think about experiences and not things that people can paw through. No one can take a trip or a travel or an experience that you had at a concert or a theater or a museum when you're dead, right? No one's going to say, I can't dig through that. And so I don't know. You're buying a house. I'm just giving that to you right now. But really, that's it. I think, of course, I have a financial planners. I have, things prepared in retirement and things along those lines. But mostly because I want to be able to have experiences in my life. I have that as a way, my financial planner, when are you planning to retire? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not planning to retire. I don't know. Why can't I just keep doing this forever? Why? And so
we have to plug a number in.
Yeah, it's like, I need that for the formula.
Exactly.
And I can listen to this and be like, but it's like, I love what I do. I want to keep doing it for as long as possible. I want to have as many experiences accumulated as possible. And whatever means comes to me as a result of that, I think I'm very grateful and I'm very lucky to have that. So I don't think I solved anything around your question at all. I don't know.
No, I think you did. I think you helped us take that. We just did the 7 keys to successful life. And one of them was one that you just mentioned there, the event focus, the realizing that basketball game with your kid or that concert with your family or whatever, it's ridiculous money you might spend on doing that. And it's worth 10 times what you spend on it for the reasons that you just talked about. So yeah, I love that. Your book, The Business of You, it brings business principles alive. I love that idea. What are a couple of your favorites? Give us a couple tidbits here that make people go, ooh, I got to get that book.
Man, now you're
I'm setting up the softball pitch here.
All the principles are important. That's how you run a successful business.
Okay, everybody,
right?
Every single chapter, don't miss one.
I think it's things like being very proactive instead of reactive. A business always does better when they're very proactive about what they want instead of waiting and being reactive. So I see this because I do leadership trainings. I do things in organizations also. And I see the differences in leadership teams that are a little bit more, their way of operating is I'll wait till there's a problem and then I'll respond to it. Or I'm going to take actions based on the fear of someone complaining or someone doing this, but it's not really working towards who I want to be as a company and who I want to serve and what value I want to provide, right? And so a lot of times it's just like what I talked about. If you can figure out the impact and the value that you want to have, and it doesn't have to be global. You don't have to, fix, the climate change issue. You don't have to save the animals. It could be just within yourself and anyone that you come in contact with, that you just want to be this better person you see within yourself, because you know that it's going to have a positive influence and impact on those around you, right? And so that's a proactive initiative. You have to then understand, what does it take to be that person? What do I need to improve upon? How do I need to manage my emotions in a different way, or my responses? How do I need to think differently? So that's very proactive versus like, I'll wait until I hit rock bottom. I'll wait until my spouse or partner wants to leave. I'll wait till my kids are estranged. And then I'll try to repair and fix things with them. I'll wait until I have disease and I'm, really overweight and having issues before I really take action. And so I see this a lot. And sometimes we don't realize that we're being reactive, just like the leadership teams that I work with don't realize they're being reactive. They don't see it. It's a blind spot. So for me, and I have like questions, like worksheets. I think you probably saw that in the back of each chapter to help people to reflect upon this. Where am I being proactive? Where do I need to be more proactive instead of reactive? So that's a really important one. And then I think just my very first chapter is this concept of, kind of figuring out your purpose. It's you're figuring out your why, what you want out of life, what inspires you, what gets you back up when you've been knocked down. We all get knocked down. And if we get back up again, even if we're scarred and bruised and injured, there's something within us that is talking to us, whether we consciously recognize it or not. That's telling us that there's something important, right, in our lives to get up and keep fighting for. And so I think that very first chapter, if you can establish, and maybe it's not a final copy, right? And I often share my purpose, with my clients, but if you can start to figure that out for yourself, it really helps you with the rest of the chapters. What am I going to be proactive about, right? I have to know who I am, what's important to me, those sorts of things. When I have to make a really tough decision is like, they're both good choices or they're both bad choices, right? It's like these ethical or moral dilemmas, right? And so what is it that helps me to decide what it is, even if no one agrees with me? Because there's something internal to me that's telling me that. And so we tend to tune out versus to tune in as people. I always say that we're human doings. We're sort of programmed to be human doings. Right. And I'm helping people to discover their human being to then take it to the human living side. So you have to be, right, instead of just do, but then you have to live. And living means action. So that's like that, woo, I'm creating human living, Brad. You know that?
All right. So a lot of what you're talking about, I love the purpose, or we talk a lot about vision, such key concepts. And yet, a lot of the folks that you and I both talk to are like, they've been through the 80s and the 90s and all the set your vision statement and your purpose statement and all that kind of stuff. And we understand how important it is. We're out there shouting it from the mountaintops. But a lot of the folks that hear us are saying, I did that 20 years ago. It didn't really. What do you say to that person? How do you help them realize, yes, it got a lot of talk. It got overutilized. It got utilized incorrectly. But the process itself is one of the most powerful things you can ever do. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Most of the time when people go through courses, right, or they're working on purpose, vision, whatever it might be, I always tell this organization, you're doing it in a cognitive way. It's a cognitive process, right? So you're saying, what matters to you? And your immediate reaction is to be like, what sounds good to this other person?
Right. What do they want to hear?
My family, so honestly, we're tapping into all of these little cognitive neural pathways when we ask people to work on this. And that just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So, and I am guilty of that. For years, I had these questions that people would answer. And now I've scrapped the questions. And in my training programs, what I really try to get people to do is to really tap into emotions, to really kind of dig deep into these inner experiences. And we might share a story, I might ask someone like, tell me something that's really, a really hard time that you've been through in your life where you felt despair, where you felt like, this is horrible, I'm never going to feel better. Like, things along those lines, just really traumatic events or terrible things. These are kinds of things we talk about. So warning, if you ever go to my programs, but, and someone will inevitably share something really powerful. And then when you ask them, like, what kept you going, or what was some light that came in, and they share that, I feel like they're discovering it for themselves in that moment too. They're tapping into a feeling and an inner experience that's tied to some cognition, but it's also memories, emotions, I don't know, the essence of us. And when they verbalize it, I don't think that they realize that this is what we're talking about. This is your purpose, right? And so then people start to see what we're talking about, right? They feel it from the person. And so then, without asking any questions, I just have people start writing. And the stuff that they come up with is vastly different than if you give them leading and prompting questions. When you ask them about people that they really admire, people that they know, not famous people they truly know, and you ask them why they admire them or what is it about them, not that they want to become that person, but there's something there, right? And they start to talk about that. They can start to discover, what is it within me that others might pick up on and notice, right? So that kind of makes me a person, not to admire like in this like kind of way, you know what I mean? Yeah. But like, wow, I admire the way that you really live your values, or I admire the way that you've been able to overcome such difficult things and still have an optimistic attitude, or to have all of these privileges and still be so humble, or whatever it might be, right? So you have all of these things come up, and then it just forces people to think about those things in themselves in a different way. And then I think if you let them just keep writing and exploring these sorts of things, then you can give them some prompting questions that can bring out some other things. But you have to start, I think, from an emotional space. And typically when people go through these programs, you're sitting like in a meeting room, right? Like you're with peers or something, and there's appearances to keep up. Sure. You might be going through a leadership development program. There are things that you probably feel they want to hear from you as a developing, upcoming, high potential person, right? So there's already a sense of obligation to sound a certain way and to have some. So then what happens is they come up with something and it doesn't move them. It's not a representative of their true self and what they really want. And that, what you're talking about, Brad, is like the self-actualization, right. And that's the hardest thing to achieve in life, like when you look at kind of our development as human beings, and some people will live on this earth for 100 years and never reach self-actualization, and you have to do work. We're instant gratification people. We want to be able to just have our purpose written, be like, see, I wrote it. I can type it up now and just slap it on a screen, and then I'm done. And then just everything happens, everything aligns. That's what we're programmed to do. Instant gratification. Where's the pill? Where's the pill? Where's the, the thing that's just where's the HGTV makeover? I'm going to enter to win that. I want to win the lottery. I just want the money. I don't want to have to do anything for it. I mean, how many things kind of emphasize this approach? Right.
No doubt.
And so we're just not willing to go there. And we're also scared of what we're going to find. And that's the other thing. We all, like these trollers on the internet, I say, oh man, if we peel back the layers, they'd be in the fetal position crying for a year, because there is so much pain, so much suffering, so much trauma, so much hurt. The only way they know how to deal with that is to lash out. And that's what I try to tell, my kids who are on social media or have TikTok, and all of these people say these ugly things. Just have some empathy and compassion for them. Those people that say those things and write those things are hurting so badly. That is a projection and reflection of what's going on. But this is what we see, right? And we don't have established infrastructures and systems to really help people do this, because therapy is for messed up people, right? It's not for the everyday people to self-actualize. Everyone should have some kind of self-actualization coach, therapist of some sort. And there's so much stigma still around going to see somebody to help you to maybe tap into those things. But we have to, if we really, really want to live a fulfilling life.
Yeah. Beautiful. And just to jump on the last part of your sentence there, and we're hurting too. And so we don't take the time to think, this person that's attacking me on Twitter or TikTok or whatever is hurting, because doggone it, that hurt me. that cut to the core. And so I'm going to respond back, and it just becomes, oh, wow.
And I learned a lesson, Brad, teaching programs long ago. I used to have, in any course, you present like I do, you always have like the cross the arms. I don't want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can tell me that's going to help change me, enlighten me, or anything. And I'm certainly not going to give you the satisfaction of even cracking a smile when you make a joke. Right. So you've got these people in the class, and I used to get so anxiety filled, right? Oh my gosh, how can I win them over? Oh my gosh, or I would either try to win them over, which would make me try harder, and then I would kind of leave my authentic self in doing so, or I would just be super pissed about them, And I have been known to, I've fired patients, I have kicked people out of class, I have that, which is what we do as a defense mechanism, right? We're people pleasers, which lots of people in organizations fall into this, and they feel like they're thriving and they're not. They have let go of limits and boundaries and anything that's functional to them in order to win over others and people please. And then we have the other side of it, which is the lashing out, the anger, the controlling, the defensiveness, the blame, all of those sorts of things to give yourself back some power, right? But one day I learned from a client that I had in the class, he was being super difficult. And I was just tired of him. I was just so tired of him. But he came over to me later and just said to me, I just wanted to let you know that I know that I look like I'm being a jerk and all of these things, but I have these personal things going on in my life. And then he started crying. And from that moment forward, I just made the assumption, I took it upon myself to make the assumption that every difficult person was in pain and suffering. And so it caused me to respond and interact with them in a different way. And in doing so, without trying to get them to talk to me, many of them would come and talk to me and cry and open up, which then just reinforced that this is true. Now, some don't do that, and some leave there and say, you suck, and they give me a bad evaluation anyway, right? But that's okay, because that's where they are and that's where they need to be in that moment. And when you're suffering and you're in pain, you have to do the types of things that help you to feel better about that. Now, sometimes it inevitably hurts other people, and that might seem unfair. That's how the world works, right? And that's how life works. And so this is where I feel like if we could create a system in which we could help people to discover that, they think I'm a bad person, I'm a mean person, I'm a this. And I always say, what you do is not your identity. What you do is because of what you're experiencing in your inner experience. It doesn't define who you are. You can always define who you are yourself, and then have different responses or different behaviors. So that really kind of changed how I look at people that are kind of in that space, and it helps. Now sometimes I'm like, why'd you do that? And I go, oh, wait a second. I don't know what kind of day they're having. I'm a human being too, right? And I get my feelings hurt, and I have things that I don't understand why people behave in certain ways, but I really reflect upon it later. And I try to create a story that explains why they've, acted that way, or why they are the way that we see them, which is really important.
It's a key
That's
phrase.
Not the way that they are.
Exactly.
It's the way that we see them in the world. And so I don't know if this helps other people, but I think that organizations also lack this. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and this notion of belongingness, we very much look at, obviously the things we look at with gender and race, and those things are critical, and the sexual orientation and gender identity. But we also need to look at this, because people have experienced trauma or neglect or abuse or many other situations that cause them to act out. We fire them, we punish them, we put them on plans, we, might move them so that they're not with other people, instead of realizing that there's a reason that they're acting that way and helping them, because I can guarantee you that that person has talent and skills and capabilities that you could tap into if you would help them in that process. And sometimes it's the culture that contributes negatively to these sorts of things, right? But I think it's an obligation of organizations to consider that as part of belongingness, as part of inclusiveness, because all too often people who've experienced these things do get ostracized. They do get they become lonely. And these are the people that become homeless. These are the people whose mental illness that could have been managed become almost what appears to us as unmanageable and untreatable. And I think that it starts really, really early on. What do we teach in school? We teach to the test. We teach so you can get a good job and you make money.
Right.
Once again, it starts really early. What do you want to do when you grow up? You are 7. Why don't you know this already? Right? Like, oh my gosh, I tell my kids, you shouldn't know what you want to do in life right now. What you should know is what you enjoy, what, brings your passion out. If you need to go to school or not go to school or whatever it is, that's what you need to discover. It is so insane kind of what we teach to kids at a very, very early age that really takes us off course from what we know scientifically makes us feel like fulfilled, happy human beings. You know that, right? It's like we all talk about science and evidence-based. And I just look around and I'm like, that is just a joke. We just totally don't even use the science from the get-go when it comes to a lot of what we already know. We just don't use it.
We're missing it. Yep. Absolutely.
We're totally missing it.
Absolutely.
So, Brad, if they want to change the structure and the systems, right, of the world, of the culture, they should contact us because we know the science.
Exactly. Bring it back.
We could be like consultants.
Bring it back. Exactly. Evidence-based consultants, EBCs. We got this. All right, I've got one more for you I want to play around with a little bit. But beforehand, how do people follow you? If they're listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, this lady's so low energy. I think I've got to follow her. Where's the best place? Is it Twitter? Is it Instagram? What do you like?
Well, it depends on what they like.
There you go. Good answer.
Right? So if you like to follow people in professional circles, I'm on LinkedIn. It's Dr. Raquel Garzon. If you like to follow social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, I have that under my company name, which is Revitalize Project. If you are totally old school and you just want to email me, you can also do that, but that's old school.
I thought you were going to say fax machine, but that's okay.
Not that old, Brad. Come on. And so that is Raquel, Raquel at revitalizeproject.com. So you can email me there. And I hope to connect with people who this is resonating for and see what we can do to change the world, but like one moment at a time, one cell at a time as we go. Same philosophy, right? You can't change it all, but you can certainly have an influence and impact on those little moments that you interact with others, as I am interacting with you today.
Exactly. So. All right. So last question. Let's turn the mirror around. What are you doing differently in your life now to revitalize that maybe 2-3 years ago, it wasn't a thing for you?
Wow. Such a deep question.
I can hum Jeopardy in the background or something if you want.
Well, I mean, I'm always doing different things. So I'll tell you that I'm usually really active. I have lupus. And I have a autonomic dysfunction, so it affects my whole nervous system and it can get me down sometimes. So I overwork in terms of I do mountain biking and kickboxing and lift weights and do all of these things to try to manage and do as much as possible, right? Because lupus can be very debilitating.
Sure. Huge.
Autonomic dysfunction occurs. My whole system shuts down. I'm in the fetal position, right? So I feel like I do a little bit of overcompensation physically. I follow a super strict eating regimen, but I dislocated my shoulder just over a month ago. This is my first major injury. It was super traumatic. I still keep reliving it. I'm asking the therapist, how many times am I going to relive this biking incident, right, where my whole shoulder came out and it fell down and I'm watching this bone. It was disgusting and it was just horrible. So I can't do a lot of the things I was doing. I salsa dancing, all kinds of stuff. And so I've shifted into, what can I do? Let's be reasonable, right? But maybe this is an opportunity for me to reflect and to do something different. So my kids are teenagers and they're into anime. And I just always found it annoying. I would hear the voices and I'm it's just so annoying. And they do cosplay and all of these things. And so I said, what are your favorite animes to my kids? And so they told me some of the favorite animes. And I said, okay, I'm going to I'm hurt right now. I can't do some of these things. I'm going to invest that time into watching some of these animes that you enjoy. And Brad, I have to tell you, I'm completely sucked. I mean, the anime has a lot of violence and these sorts of things, but there are so many life lessons. I have been watching an anime for the last several days that I have cried about. I literally looked up today this psychological analysis of this anime. I feel like I could do a daily post on my social media about some of the characters, about the trauma, the way that they come across in the world. What are the things that make them change and realize that they need to change? Like, I know it's anime and I know like I have like science-based degrees, but I am telling you that this has been like this newfound, like I could totally see why my kids love it. I don't think it's, like I thought it was like polluting their minds. I think that there's so many great lessons in it that I have discovered this thing. My kids feel closer to me because I'm enjoying something that they enjoy. We can talk about the characters and we can talk about some of the things that the characters are going through. And now I will be going to Comic-Con with my kids. And I am doing cosplay with them. So I'll be posting those pictures coming up in September when we go to the Comic-Con. And I'm like, I feel this character. I need to embody this character. This is the character I'm going to play. And here's why. So anyway, I know it sounds silly and it sounds like a hobby, but just this morning I was introspecting around why I've seemed to be attracted to sort of broken or traumatized people and what that says about me, right? Like we a lot of times want to consider ourselves heroes in those stories, right? Like I am attracted to this person or I'm fond of this person or I want to hang out with this person because I can see that they're broken and I'm going to fix them, right? Like there's this.
Yeah. Sure.
But the truth of the matter is when I was reflecting this morning is that it reflects some of the hurt and trauma and things that I have myself that maybe I wish somebody had come and rescued me or talked to me about earlier in my life or something like that. There's this discovery. I am not the hero in the story, right? And so that was literally from watching an episode this morning because I watch it while I put on my makeup. And I just thought, wow, I've done a lot of therapy. I've probably done, 25 years of therapy and I've done them all. Right now I'm doing regressive hypnosis. Like when I tell you I've done it all, I've done it all. But this morning's anime was the first time that I literally had this piece of reflection within myself. So that is something I'm working on and kind of exploring further and doing it through anime. So
that is awesome. That is so funny.
There's some cool stuff in there.
That's very cool. Raquel, this was so fun. We didn't know each other before. Every guest is an adventure on both sides, and you were fantastic. People are going to love your energy. Keep up the great work, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the #1 podcast for health and wellness coaching, and thanks again to Dr. Raquel Garzon for joining us today. On the coaching front, feel free to reach out to us, results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com, or access additional resources at catalystcoachinginstitute.com or over at the YouTube coaching channel at youtube.com/coaching channel. If you're looking for career guidance, ideas for integrating best-in-class coaching into your employee wellness program, or anything coaching related, we're there for you. Next week's episode brings motivational interviewing juggernaut Hugh Gilmore to our studio. Motivational interviewing is absolutely, and I think obviously, a huge topic for health and wellness coaches, but it's just as effective for leaders, parents, athletes, and the rest of us. Now it's time to be a catalyst on this journey of life. The chance, you know what's coming, to make a positive difference in the world while simultaneously improving our own lives. That's what being a catalyst is all about. This is Dr. Bradford Cooper of the Catalyst Coaching Institute. Make it a great rest of your week, and I'll speak with you soon on the next episode of the Catalyst Health, Wellness, and Performance Coaching Podcast, or maybe over at youtube.com/coaching channel.